everybody. Welcome to the Glentendo podcast. I'm Glentendo. This is my show. This is a Smash community / Nintendo news, big brain, fun conversation podcast. We are a weekly show. We go up every Thursday for supporters on Patreon at patreon.com/Glentendo. If you like the show, please support. And the show then becomes free to all the following Sunday on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and YouTube. Welcome to the first show of 2021. I'm excited to actually continue into a new year and have a lot of cool ideas about how to grow the show and maybe some more content that we can add for the Patreon supporters. So keep an ear out and an eye out for that. How was your holiday, everybody? Did you guys get any awesome Nintendo stuff for the holidays? I've been actually, because of last episode where I kind of went through a couple of holiday video game horror stories. A lot of people have been asking me how this holiday was, and it was okay. I got the Link's Awakening remake for the Switch as a gift, which was a great gift. You'd think I'd already have that game because, like, first of all, I love the original Link's Awakening, and I'm obviously the greatest and the largest and the most sophisticated Zelda fan of all time, right? But I actually didn't buy the remake because the Switch has been so insane in terms of how much content has come out. Like, I'm thinking back to the Wii U and the 3DS and even like the Wii days where you would go like 7 to 8 months without any big games to play. The Switch has been the complete opposite. Like, it's so many games that I can't keep up. So very early on, I bought so many games that like I basically made a pact with myself, like, all right, don't buy any more games even if it's Zelda. Like, don't buy any more games until you get through this backlog, unless it's a game that you're going to play like immediately. So obviously, like, Smash Brothers, I bought that the split second it was out. But like, I had to make some concessions. So Luigi's Mansion 3 and Link's Awakening, I have not gotten to yet. So I was super happy to get those for the holidays last week. And I got, in addition to the game, I also got the cool little Link's Awakening amiibo where he looks it's so perfect. It's like that art style looks really cool. And even though that game's art style was disappointing at first, I've actually it's obviously it's grown on me, and it is a beautiful art style. The only problem with the art style of that game is, if anybody remembers Link's Awakening on the Game Boy, the beginning of that game, they have like a very iconic little sequence. It's like a hand drawn little animation thing. It's very crude and very primitive animation, but it's like Link on a boat and there's a storm, and it's just setting up the premise of the game where he gets washed up ashore on some island after some storm where he's sailing in the ocean, and playing a Game Boy Color game, right? And seeing that intro, you kind of go, okay, like, this is what the world is supposed to look like. So as you're playing the game, you're kind of just like projecting what that world actually looks like. And the little pixels on your Game Boy Color screen, you can tell, like, okay, this is it's supposed to be a representation of that world. So then when the remake got shown and the art style is like this whole other thing, it's so weird. It's like it looks like toys and stuff, and it's a beautiful art style. The lighting engine's awesome. Like, it looks sick. But if you're a diehard Link's Awakening fan that played the original, you're like, that's not what the world, you guys painted a picture in my head of what the world was supposed to look like in that game, and this new art style is not that. So it is a little bit of an adjusting thing, but like, once you let go of that, this game looks stunning. It's so cool. And actually, somebody else mentioned how, this year's Zelda's 35th anniversary, so maybe we're going to get the other Game Boy Zelda games remade in that style, and that would just be such a cool, like, trilogy of games, like Link's Awakening, Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons, all in that art style together. That would be sick. And Nintendo can make it available for 3 days or 3 hours. But anyway, so I got that for the holidays. I don't think I got anything else that was gaming related. Um, and believe me, I noticed because I did not receive, what I received is important, but what's more important is what I didn't receive. I did not receive the Mario Kart Home Circuit RC car, and I definitely did not receive the Mario 35 Game and Watch. Both of these limited items, these really cool things that would have been great gifts for the holidays that I didn't buy myself because I assumed that my family would be savvy enough to get it for me. And now here I am resorting to the aftermarket where I have to pay an arm and a leg to get those things, bro. So my family kind of dropped the ball, if I'm going to be honest. And the only reason I bring it up is because I'm announcing here right now, I'm officially putting myself up for adoption. If anybody wants to take me into their home and make sure that a Christmas doesn't go by where I don't get some limited Nintendo awesome thing like that Game and Watch, please take me in. But yeah, outside of that, my holidays are pretty good. So we'll head into some quick news. You guys already know that all I'm going to do, anytime I have an opportunity to talk about Pikmin 3 Deluxe, I'm going to talk about it. So we just found out today that we got some good news that, I think I'm making an impact and I'm actually having an effect on the big scale Nintendo world because Pikmin 3 Deluxe is officially the fastest selling entry in the series in Japan. So they just counted like the physical sales and it's already like on pace to just like outsell the total sales of like the first 3 games. And it's even better than that because it doesn't include digital sales. So that's just physical. Like digitally, who knows? It probably sold way better than that, but we don't know because Nintendo has this thing where they don't tell you how much their games have sold digitally, and it's kind of insane because like last year, Animal Crossing broke all sorts of records, and all of the sales data was based off of simply just people who bought it physically. And like clearly there's an insane amount of people who bought that game and buy all their games on the Switch digitally. I've been all digital since the Switch came out, but there are so many other people where, especially in the pandemic, they're like, I'm not going to a store, man. I'm just going to download this game. Like so one of the funny things is that some of the members of my family just got a Switch and they're like not the most hardcore gamers, right? They're so used to downloading games that when I gave my brother a physical copy of a brand new game as a gift, and my sister, both of them had the same question. They were like, wait, so, okay, this card goes in the game system, and I need to keep it in there to play, right? And like it threw me off because I'm like, they thought that maybe it was like you just put the card in, it installs the software, and you don't need the game card anymore, which obviously would defeat the purpose. But like, I get why their brain thought of that. Like, this is so. As a society, we are so used to digital stuff that now it was like weird for them to think I need to keep this silly little card in my system to play this game. Like, it was so funny to answer that question, but yeah, Pikmin 3 Deluxe, it's looking good, at least in Japan. I don't know about Europe and America. Japan seems to be more like open to, the weird Nintendo stuff and also like the cuteness of it. I mean, something like Splatoon 2 is like big everywhere, but it's like really, really, really big in Japan. Like way bigger in Japan than it is in Europe or in the US. So Pikmin might be like that, but I don't care. As long as it's selling well somewhere, like that's a really good sign if it's already selling really well this early on. So yeah, on to 2021. We're going to talk a little bit about what we can expect from our favorite gaming company, the GOAT, the greatest of all time, Nintendo in 2021. As usual, right? Like there are these Twitter reruns every couple of like weeks. The things that you saw on Twitter will just come back out of nowhere, and everyone will act like, this is the first time this is happening. So every January, there's always like clockwork, the first week of every single January of the year, some dude decides to take a picture, some blurry photo of a paper that has a Nintendo logo on it, and it says a bunch of games on it. It's a leaked document that says what the next Nintendo Direct is going to show, and it's always like the most predictable stuff, like, oh, Splatoon 3 and Mario Kart 9, and everything, that they just take every game that's successful that came out a couple years ago and added a +1 to it, and then everyone thinks it's like a legitimate leak. Meanwhile, I've made this point a million times on this show, but people have not, these leaks have not predicted. I don't know what Nintendo's doing, because other companies don't seem to know how to avoid these leaks. Nintendo's been doing such a great job with these, avoiding these leaks. Sometimes people will get half of an announcement right, and then they'll just miss the most insane part of it. Like last year, we got Mario Kart Home Circuit. Nobody leaked that. Nobody leaked that there was going to be an RC car controlled with your Switch game, Mario Kart game. Nobody leaked the Mario 35 on the Nintendo Online app. Nobody leaked Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. So I would just tell people, please, man, can we just all stop with the fake leaks or even paying attention to them? They've been wrong every time. And every time that there's a new character for Smash that's going to be announced, people always get it wrong. Sephiroth was literally not even close to being on anyone's radar, and that was the last character. People were saying Tracer from Overwatch. I just hate the leaker culture in general. But anyway, yeah. So please ignore all that. I want to talk about Nintendo's 2021 because it's the first week of January, but I think I'm so excited for this year, but it's not for the reasons that I think most people are. I think most people, and there's a lot of other gaming podcasts that are talking about what to look forward to in 2021, and I think a lot of people are not that excited, because if you look at the list of what Nintendo has coming down the pipe for this year, it's really not much, right? So we'll go through that list right now. So next month, February 12th, we get a port of the Wii U title, Super Mario 3D World, which is going to be, it's just going to be awesome to finally play that game on a system that I actually enjoy. I couldn't stand holding that gamepad. I really didn't want to play that game on a gamepad. And the second I finished that game, I never picked it back up, despite how good the game is. It's going to have online multiplayer, which thank goodness, especially given everything that's going on. But it also has this thing called an added world, it seems like, or added content called Bowser's Fury. They haven't specified what exactly that is, but I'm praying that it's a super hard mode for that game. I mean, the thing about Mario games, and the reason why I'm so excited for a potential super hard mode, is that Mario games they serve this amazing purpose of being a great entry point for anyone who's coming into games for the first time, right? But they used to also be difficult to master, right? So the very first Mario game, I don't think there's anyone in the world who played that game and thought this game is easy. They just thought this game is fun and I can give this to my kid and I can also play this myself. But no one would say that that game is easy. But I think the more Mario games went by, the more experience the fan base got, because you have decade after decade of Mario games. But then the games almost felt like they just got easier and easier and more just catering to the entry level audience, and not to the people like me who, all right, I'm an expert at these games now. I've been playing them my whole life. So when I played Mario 3D World, I really enjoyed it, but I found that I only really, really, really enjoyed the last special bonus extra secret levels in the game. And it was wow, I really had to play the entire game to get the one batch of levels that I really, really enjoyed. I just want to play a really hard platformer, a Mario platformer. So I'm really hoping that Bowser's Fury thing is that, because it's it looks all intense and stuff. If you guys haven't seen it's a very short teaser that's at the reveal trailer for this game, but definitely go look at that. I can't wait to play this game. I think I might have to. I'm gonna have to buy a gun and like at gunpoint make all my family members buy this game so we could just play the whole thing co-op. I don't know. I feel like sometimes I'm the only one in my family who really likes Mario. Like all my people in my family like Mario, but they're I think everyone's kind of like, yeah, I feel like we played all the Mario we need to play for the rest of our life. Whereas I'm still excited for a new Mario game, uh, even when they are easy. So I don't know. I would like to, because this game is a four-player co-op game the entire game. I really want to like do that, and I guess I could just find my group of friends, but my family, I might have to hold them at gunpoint, unless again one of you kind people wants to adopt me into your family, as I mentioned earlier. So Mario 3D World, February 12th. Then we have Bravely Default 2, which is February 26th. That's a sequel to a 3DS JRPG made by Square Enix. Actually, people really love the first two Bravely Default games. And this is, even though technically this is the third entry in the series, it's called Bravely Default 2 because it's like a direct sequel to the first one. Square Enix with their naming conventions, like from like the Final Fantasy games to like the Kingdom Hearts games, they're on another level of confusing their fan base. But that's why I'm here. So anyway, that's February 26th. I know a lot of people really want to play that. A lot of fans of like Octopath Traveler are really going to want to play this game. And then we have Persona 5 Strikers, comes out February 23rd. So that's actually before Bravely Default 2. This game came out a year ago in Japan, but it just hasn't come out anywhere else yet. So it's not a classic Persona game. Like it's not a JRPG. It's not. It's only like in the universe of Persona 5. It's more of an action style game. But yeah, that's coming. I know some people are really excited about that. And then we have Monster Hunter Rise, March 26th. And then we have two big games that were announced and shown, but have no date. So new Pokemon Snap, which is like whenever that comes out, I'm buying that day one. I've been waiting for a new Pokemon Snap my entire life. That game on the N64 is classic. It's really short. It's like just really unique though and really cool. And I don't know anyone who doesn't like that original Pokemon Snap game. One of the best spin-offs of all time. And then, of course, the Big Daddy, Breath of the Wild 2, or some people are calling it just Breath of the Wild sequel. We're not really sure what the real name is. Some people are speculating it's going to come out sooner than we think. Some people are just like, dude, who knows? You know? So, yeah, that's basically all we know in terms of like the big titles. Like some of those aren't even that big, but it's the biggest ones that we have announced, and the two biggest ones there, I think, are Pokemon Snap and Breath of the Wild 2. And like, there's no date for that. They've just been shown in terms of like that Breath of the Wild trailer was really short. So a lot of people are kind of like a little not excited, right? But I am actually super excited because the thing about me is that I remember growing up and being a Nintendo fan and just being a gaming fan in general. uh, it got really annoying to me that like companies announce games that are not going to come out for like 3 years. And of course, Nintendo still does this to some degree, right? Like obviously, Metroid Prime 4, they just showed like literally a logo, and Bayonetta 3, literally a logo. Um, but for the most part, like those are outliers. Like for the most part, they really do announce games that are going to come out within the next 3 to 4 months, and they've been very consistent about that with the entire Switch like lifespan. So like for example, I mentioned earlier, Paper Mario, we had no idea that was coming until like weeks before it came out, and the same thing with Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity. Like they just showed it to us a couple weeks before it came that game released. So I love that because I don't want to get too excited, and I don't want to get excited about something and then just like years go by and you don't care anymore and it's just like dragged on. Like at this point, Metroid Prime 4 is so distant in my memory that it's like I don't even remember being that excited about that game anymore. That was so long ago. And it feels like it's going to take forever for us to even get it. So I'm actually really, really hyped that this is like kind of a barren thing because I know that they have games. Like 2020 was a very light year for Nintendo. They had basically two, three big games that came out, and only one of them was created internally at their main studios, like in Japan. Hyrule Warriors was made by Koei Tecmo, and Paper Mario was made by Intelligent Systems. So like those aren't even like the in-house like first party like Mario Zelda teams. The only game that came out from those people was Animal Crossing, and that game had been delayed forever. So I think they went really really strong in the first 3 years of the Switch, and there was such a consistent library of games, and just like every 2 3 months you got like a big first party title. And I thought 2020 was kind of like a light year. Like even before COVID, we all kind of knew that 2020 was going to be kind of light. They had a lot of their big franchises like already out: Mario, 3D Mario, Zelda, Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, like Splatoon. They had all that stuff come out. So it's going to be cool to see now that they've had that year off, and also they had that year to kind of recruit after the COVID stuff. Like I'm sure by now they figured out their workflow and they're working probably more consistently, through the COVID stuff. And there's got to be a direct coming this January, or at the very latest, early February, to like detail all of the Super Mario 3D World stuff. And they're probably going to put that at the forefront. And I'm sure there's like a dozen games that we have no clue about that they're just going to be like, oh, yeah, this game and this game and this game are coming soon within the first 3 months of the year. And I can't wait. I want them to just become even weirder. I want more stuff like Mario Kart Home Circuit, or like Nintendo Labo, or like Ring Fit Adventure. And then I also want, like the sequels to all the major hardcore stuff like Breath of the Wild 2 and Metroid Prime 4, and maybe some new franchise that we have no idea about. Maybe Pikmin 4 is really going to come finally. Um, but yeah, that I can't wait. I can't wait to get a date for Pokemon Snap and all that stuff. So 2021, I'm actually very, very excited about that. And of course, it's Zelda and Metroids. Both of those franchises, 35th anniversary. So who knows what we're going to get? There's been rumors of like a 2D Metroid coming, which right now that would hit so hard. That would hit all the right spots, bro. I would love to play like an awesome 2D Metroid, or like look at what they did with like the Fire Emblem thing, the Fire Emblem 35th anniversary, like really cool re-release of the first game. And it had all this cool packaging. If they do something like that, that has like all those awesome 2D Metroid games, like the first one, or Zero Mission, or Fusion together, like, I don't even think they have to go all out for Metroid. They just have to offer us some Metroid games that we would be really excited about. And I think people will be super happy. And of course, like they've been sitting on Metroid Prime Trilogy forever. Like that game was ported to the Wii U even. And there's been rumors of it coming to the Switch forever. Like one of the rumors was so specific. It was like, dude, this remake, this port of that trilogy has been done and sitting on a shelf forever, and they're just waiting to time it with like something to promote Metroid Prime 4 and all their other Metroid plans. So a lot of people are really cynical about Nintendo and Metroid this year, but given what they did for Fire Emblem, granted, Fire Emblem has probably become a bigger franchise now, but like there's no way that Fire Emblem game is going to sell more than if they have some Metroid anniversary thing of some kind. So can't wait to see what that's gonna be like. And obviously Zelda 35, like we know they're gonna do something, and especially if it ties together with Breath of the Wild 2, that's just gonna be so sick. Like I'm gonna have to bankrupt myself just buying all the cool 35th anniversary Zelda stuff. I actually don't like stuff. I actually really like to keep my life very like light, and I don't like memorabilia and stuff. But when it comes to Zelda stuff, that's like the one weakness I have, where it's like they had that cool Master Sword that came with Breath of the Wild if you got like the super extra bonus like version of the game. And I had to have that because it's a cool Master Sword. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. Of course, the elephant in the room is that if they do announce something really cool for Zelda and for Metroid, if it's like Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD and Skyward Sword HD put together in a package or whatever, clearly it's going to be available for 3 months or something insane like that. Some insane limitation, the way they did with Mario 3D collection, the 3D All Stars, and the Mario 35th 35 game on the Switch Online app. So I actually have a good solution though. This is how they can. This is how you kind of like make everybody happy. This is how you Nintendo gets to give you a limited release of these things, but also the fans will be happy with it. I think that from now on, whenever they are going to commemorate an anniversary, the game should be available for the exact amount of time that the anniversary is celebrating. So if it's a 1 year anniversary, the game is out there. This special edition is out there for 1 year. All right. So with this Zelda thing, they should give us at least 35 years to buy whatever special collection they're going to put out. That would satisfy everybody. Everybody gets a nice window of time to buy it, and Nintendo gets to on that 36th year, on January 4th, 1st of that 36th year, they just get to tell you no, and they're happy telling you no. Don't celebrate Zelda anymore. It's over. So the only other big thing that happened in the Nintendo universe this week is that we got a demo for Monster Hunter Rise. Monster Hunter is becoming such a huge franchise, and this game is a Switch exclusive from Capcom, and it's a big deal. Like we talked about this back when they announced the game, but Monster Hunter has become a lot more popular, but it's kind of interesting because usually when a franchise comes becomes popular and it's available on all platforms, usually what has happened but traditionally is that like the more hardcore version of that series will be on the Xbox and the PlayStation, and then we'll get some kind of like more casual version of it on the Nintendo platform. But it's actually the opposite now. So Monster Hunter World has been Capcom's biggest game ever, and it came out years ago at this point, but it's a more casual entry level version of Monster Hunter, and the true hardcore sequel to the Monster Hunter series is Monster Hunter Rise. And so this is a very big franchise. So like there are a lot of people who are going to be really excited about this. And Monster Hunter, especially in Japan, it was always very successful on the PSP and on the 3DS and on like these handheld devices because it's more fun, and it's designed to be more of like a four-player co-op game where you get together with your friends and you all hunt this giant monster together. So on the Switch, of course, that's like perfect home for it. Not surprised that Capcom wants to really double down on the Switch for this new hardcore installment. Also, just Japan, like I actually just saw some sales figures recently that apparently like the PS5 is not selling that well in Japan. I don't know if it's because they just haven't been able to produce as many consoles because there's a lot going on in the world and stuff. But I also wouldn't be, the Switch has been destroying the PlayStation in Japan for such a long time. Like since it's come out, the Switch is consistently at the top, and PlayStation as a brand is kind of a lot weaker in Japan now because the culture in Japan is a lot more consolidated, and it's been headed this way for years where they're more mobile focused and more handheld focused. And Nintendo is just obviously they're the only handheld option at this point, and Sony's gone the opposite route. It's like while Nintendo is creating this like device that is really small and you can dock it or take it with you, Sony went the opposite direction. The PS5 is enormous. Like that thing is huge. And that's one of the main reasons why the Xbox never took off in Japan was because the Xbox consoles are massive. People in Japan tend to like small and quiet devices. And they usually, especially in the cities, there's not a lot of space. People have very small apartments and they like to use their space efficiently. So, that being considered, and Monster Hunter Japan being Monster Hunter's biggest like market, it makes a lot of sense that they're like, you know what, we're gonna go with the Switch, and we're just gonna make the best possible game for the Switch. So I played the demo, and I have some impressions on the demo. I kind of was saying earlier how like I've never been a huge Monster Hunter guy, and I've always tried to get into Monster Hunter with like the new installment. I'm always like, okay, this is the one where I'm going to jump in. There's something about it that seems like it would really work for me, but it hasn't yet, right? So at the when I saw Rise for the first time, I'm like, okay, this one looks like it's solving a lot of the problems I've had with Monster Hunter, where like, you have to run around this environment, you're very slow. Like now they have your little dog pal that you could ride, and they also added this like almost Spider-Man esque like web slinging thing where you have this bug that shoots out like a string and it increases your mobility. You can kind of like go up things and you can move around and stuff. It's really cool. So I played the demo going into it thinking, okay, this is the one. And immediately, immediately it dawned on me that this is just another Monster Hunter game. And that even with those changes, the core things that have kind of turned me off of that series are still there. This game is very overwhelming. Like I did the tutorial and even after doing the tutorial, I'm like, oh my God, there's so many buttons. Like every button on your controller does something. And then there's buttons that you have to like combine like L and A to do another thing. And there's a lot of menus. There's a lot of things you can do. There's a lot to learn. And even doing the tutorial, I felt like I got like the very basics, but it still feels so complex for me and so overwhelming in terms of the control scheme and all the commands that like that's also crazy for me to say because like I play so many games and it's very rare that a game is too complex for me, and I feel that with this game. So I always feel that with Monster Hunter games, and this game feels very much like that. So if you're already a huge Monster Hunter fan, like I'm sure you're gonna love this and you're gonna feel right at home and you're already gonna know what that meter does and what this little stat thing does and all that stuff. But for someone who's new, it can be a little overwhelming. But my biggest problem with Monster Hunter games and with a lot of games in general, and that I feel like no one talks about this, but it bothers me to no end, and it's one of the reasons why this game is a little difficult for me to get into, is the approach to the camera, right? So when you play this game, you are moving your character with the left stick, right? And then you move the camera with the right stick. Seems very simple. Seems like, okay, this is what you would want, right? Yes and no. So the problem is that when you are fighting an enemy in this game, there is no lock on, right? So it's not like Zelda. And that means that a lot of like this game is all about combat and fighting these giant like monsters and hunting them down and all that stuff, right? So the reason why that's a problem is because you have to be I already told you how there's like a very complex control scheme. There's a lot that you could do. There's a lot of buttons, a lot of commands, a lot of menus. And you also have the partners with you, like the dog and like a little cat guy, and they can do a bunch of stuff too. And so you need to be managing all that stuff, right? Also while fighting this enemy, dodging what the enemy is doing. And so constantly, the camera needs to be refocused on your target so that you can see what the monster is doing and you can like react accordingly. And so it becomes the battles are kind of chaotic, right? And you're constantly having to move the camera. So they do have a bit of a solution to it. They have this button that if you press the button, it'll recenter the camera on the target. But it's not like Zelda where it locks on, right? So in Zelda, if you hold the button, it'll just stay locked on, and then your movement changes when you're in that mode, right? So Link begins to strafe side to side, and you can like circularly rotate around an enemy, and you're constantly facing them. This game doesn't have that. It just refocuses it for a second, and then you're right back into it, and it's like you're constantly moving two different things at the same time. You're moving your character and your camera, and I know a lot of people who we're just used to that now. That's one of like the gaming conventions that people have just accepted, and I've never accepted that because again, my two favorite games of all time are Ocarina of Time on the N64 and Super Mario 64. And both of those games, of course, camera control has improved in both of those franchises. The modern like Odyssey has improved upon Mario 64 a million times over. And Breath of the Wild and all the Zelda games have made the camera better than it was in Ocarina of Time. But the core solutions that those games found for camera is that you don't constantly have to move the camera as you're playing. And the core principles are there. Like, of course, you can make fun of Mario 64 where there's certain levels where you're like, I really wish I could just move this camera. But for the most part, there are times where I'm playing that game and I'm completely moving and jumping over obstacles and I don't have to move the camera at all. I don't even think about the camera. And I'm just having a good time focusing on the one thing I'm supposed to be doing and how fun that is. And in Zelda, it's the same thing. Like you move around and then when you see an enemy, you can target him and then you can untarget him and move away from him. And it becomes this very seamless experience. And it feels like modern games kind of just, they want you to have full control of the camera the whole time. And the drawback to that is that you have these moments where you're fighting an enemy and now I'm like, oh, like I have to move this and this. And like, don't get me wrong, I am actually very good at that because I play all the modern games. Like I play a lot of different games and I'm good at doing that. But I think a lot of newer players or even just like intermediate players, right? So I think of some of the people in my family where they're not casual gamers. Like they play hardcore games and they've beaten a lot of games in their life, but there are certain genre of games that they never get into. And when I look at the pattern, I'm like, oh, it's always the games where you have to move the camera and the character at the same time. And it becomes this double challenge and it's really weird. It's very disorienting. And Monster Hunter gives me that feeling. As someone who feels like they mastered that approach to game design, to like moving the character and the camera, for me to feel like it's too much and like it's too many buttons and it's a little too complex and a little too unintuitive. I really wish, like, I'm playing the game and I just like, why can't you just do it the way that Zelda did it? Zelda solved this problem 30 years ago. Like, all right, maybe not 30. Let's see, 1998 to now. So 25, almost 25 years ago, Zelda solved the problem. And a lot of games, of course, have copied Zelda the way that they should, and to varying degrees. Like if I play Dark Souls, they have that same. You can just lock on, and you can kind of strafe around the enemy. Some do it better than others. There are moments in Dark Souls where I'm like, oh my god, this lock on system is like a bad version of the Zelda lock on system, and I wish it was the same or better. But for the most part, at least they have some semblance of it. But yeah, the camera thing is really annoying, and it's like there are exceptions, of course. Like there are some games where it all depends on what you're asking the player to do. So, for example, I'm playing Metal Gear Solid 5, and in that game, the camera never moves on its own. You are always in control of it, and you have to move it around. But the difference is that that game is a stealth game, and so it's almost purposely designed for you to kind of like survey an area, pick where you're going to go there, and it's a lot more slow. There's very rare moments where that game is giving you something very very fast paced that you need to constantly move Snake and move the camera at the same time. For the most part, I don't even really think about it because the game is about that surveillance. um, I do think there are some shortcomings to that too, though. Like if you think of something like Breath of the Wild has what I think is the best of both worlds, right? So it gives you a lot of freedom with the camera because it needs to. It's a huge environment. You need to be able to see a lot of different things, and it's looking is almost part of the gameplay. Like you're supposed to be looking around for things and looking over the landscape and like, where do I want to go? But when you encounter an enemy or something of interest, you can lock onto it. And even better, the thing about Zelda games and Mario games and all 3D Nintendo games is that they also do this half thing with the camera where there are moments and areas. A lot of people don't even notice this stuff because it's so seamless, but it makes such a big difference in terms of your experience. There are moments where the camera is programmed to move on its own to do very interesting things for the player. So, for the most famous example of this is if you play Ocarina of Time or any 3D Zelda game except Breath of the Wild. If you play Twilight Princess, Skyward Sword, Wind Waker, if Link walks up to the edge of a cliff and you just don't press anything, the camera will automatically just go above his head to an aerial position so that you can see what's down the cliff. Now, that was something that they had to design back in the N64 era because they didn't have a second stick for you to control the camera. So it was they had to figure out a way to kind of go like, okay, well, how would the player look down a cliff or a pit in this 3D environment? Let's just make it so that if you walk to the edge, it'll automatically do that. But that's something that became second nature to me that I like didn't even notice it, at all. But I was purposely walking to the edge of the cliff and like letting the game show me what was at the bottom. And there are other moments like that. Like if you're playing Mario Odyssey, right, and you're running with Mario, and then all of a sudden, if you just don't touch the camera and you decide to turn around and start running backwards into the screen. So now Mario's looking at you and he's running towards the screen. The camera will slowly and automatically kind of move behind Mario so that the camera knows that they program it so that for as long as possible, they want you to be able to see where you're going. So it's another one of those interesting things where it won't let you get stuck behind a wall and it won't let you stick the camera in an impractical place because it's about moving the camera shouldn't be part of the challenge of the game. They want you to focus on platforming. They want you to focus on solving this puzzle. And if you want to look at something, they should give you the options to look. But for the most part, you don't want to have to move the camera at all. So Metal Gear, I think, is an exception because that's, again, an example of a game where moving the camera is part of the game. It really is part of the game design of sneaking around and surveying the area and stuff. But when I'm playing Monster Hunter, I'm like, dude, I really wish that when I turn that corner, the camera automatically just followed behind my back slowly and I didn't have to like constantly move it. And when I'm fighting an enemy, I really wish that I didn't have to constantly recenter it. Like these battles get very complicated. You get hit, you get flying across like the stage and then like you're somewhere else and you're disoriented like, "Hey, where am I?" And you have to look at the thing and then next thing you know, you finally put the camera in the right spot and like, you just see the jaws of the T-Rex grab you and kill you. So Monster Hunter Rise, the game is pretty. I actually thought it would look a lot better. It doesn't look amazing. It does look good. It looks pretty good. There are moments where it looks amazing, but then there are moments where I'm like, okay, this seems like a Switch game. I think early on people thought it was going to look a lot better than it does, but it definitely looks good at the end of the day. I'm just saying like it's not going to like blow you away if you're like a PC or a PS4 or a PS5 gamer or whatever. It's just a good looking game. And I think if you're already a Monster Hunter fan, this is definitely you're going to get everything you want and more out of this. Like it's such a high quality. You could tell they put a lot of work into these games and like this game is no exception. It looks awesome for those people and stuff. I'm still not sure. I think what I'll do is if I find someone, I have a lot of friends who are into Monster Hunter, so if they want to get the game and like I can kind of just tag along and they can kind of just show me how everything works. I'm sure I'll enjoy it once I get over the hump. But damn, that hump is there, man. Like this is a very humpy game. So it's very overwhelming, like at a glance. So, but yeah, there's a lot. It definitely seems like a very high quality game. This is going to be a huge game for the Switch. And if you didn't see the Nintendo Direct, or I shouldn't say Nintendo Direct, the Monster Hunter Direct presentation that they did before launching the demo, they show you like a lot of the cool monsters and new stuff in the game. And some of these monsters are, by the way, like some of them are so ugly and so hideous that I actually really want to kill them. So the great marketing, by the way. That motivated me to play the game. Like I was watching this video and I'm like, that thing is disgusting. Hand me a sword, please. I need to kill that thing. That thing cannot be allowed to reproduce, even in this fake digital world. I just want that thing to be gone. So I'm going to play this game just to kill that thing. And yeah, with that, that's it for the first episode of 2021. Obviously, stick around every week. We're going to be talking about Nintendo stuff, talking about all sorts of different things. And if there's any audio tricky stuff, like if you guys notice anything with the audio that was a little funky with this episode, let me know. I have a new setup and I had like a little bit of an issue recording this episode. I hope the audio is great. I hope you don't even notice it. I hope every week you never even think about it, but definitely let me know if you notice anything. We had a little bit of a different setup. And yeah, come back next week. Thank you guys for sticking around. Have a good week. Have a good day. Have a good month. We're on to a new year. So come back. We're going to be talking about all that exciting Nintendo stuff when they finally decide to drop everything on us and just surprise us with whatever it is. I want you to come right back here so that we can just, talk about it together and all that stuff. But anyway, yeah, that's the show. Thank you guys very much. I will see you. You will hear from me again next week. Thank you guys. See you next week. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. You can follow me on Twitter at Super Glentendo. The Glentendo podcast is a weekly Nintendo / Smash community podcast. Our aim is to have galaxy brain conversations on all things Nintendo. If you like the show, please consider becoming a friendo and supporting on patreon.com/Glentendo. Friendos get early access to the show each Thursday. The show then becomes free to all the following Sunday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts right now and you actually like the show, please give us a good review. It helps boost our visibility so more people can find the show. This show is brought to you by our amazing producers, Naomi Eduardo, In a Yellow Flash, and the legendary Riz.